By our Arirang news features reporter An Sung-jin. Welcome.
Happy Hump Day. Great to be back, guys. Hello to all of our viewers. My name is An Sung-jin, and I'm a news features reporter here at Arirang News.
So, Sung-jin, we're going to look into a sector today that may not be as popular as K-pop and K-drama abroad, but one that is continuously growing. And also on my way to work today, I saw lots of people in the subway scrolling through these. We're talking about Webtoons.
Webtoons today. Webtoons are great for killing time on our way to work. But before I start, I want to ask you guys, have you heard of Kangpul's The Light Shop or Kimpung The History of Fools?
Those are some of the big names in the Webtoon market, right?
Yeah, it's hard not to hear about them, especially like my wife does watch a lot of Webtoons or reads them, so it's hard not to hear about them.
Right, so as you guys mentioned, these are some notable Webtoon artists and their works. And today I especially want to focus and talk about the Webtoon industry and how this is actually looking to foster its talents. 25-year-old Chun Sung-yeon aspires to be a famous Webtoon artist, not just in Korea, but around the world.
Not only did I start drawing Webtoons because I like them, but, and this may be deep, I like how I can express philosophical or deep storylines. It's not just fun comics like the old days, but it can be something more meaningful than that.
He's taking a leave of absence from his other studies to devote himself to Webtoons, and he's not the only one.
In 2024, compared to the year before, registered students increased by 25%. One thing we emphasize is real experience. We have signed MOUs with various Webtoon studios, so students could immediately gain hands-on experience as well.
The hardest step for emerging artists is probably making their debut on a major Webtoon platform. But luckily, there are talent spotters like Flory who search out stories that connect with readers.
My job entails everything related to these Webtoon creators, from finding and contacting them to producing and marketing their content. And it is important that we continue to work on discovering and showcasing new artists.
According to the Culture Ministry and Korea Creative Content Agency, South Korea's Webtoon industry saw an operating profit of more than 2 trillion won, or $1.4 billion in 2023, up by nearly 20% from the year before. South Korea's Webtoon industry continues to see a steady influx of learners. Who knows, maybe this time next year, students like Chun Sung-yeon will be making his debut on a Webtoon platform.
Sung-jin, I was actually very interested in your report because I happen to have covered Webtoons as a reporter at Arirang 10 years ago. So it's really fulfilling to see this growth happening. So Walter, are you actually into Webtoons? I mean, are you contributing to this growth?
I did quite a long time ago before I had my daughter, but I know my wife is still very much into them. But I'm also into the adaptations, how they move into movies eventually. So now these days I prefer to watch the movies, but I know that it's still an area that keeps getting bigger and bigger by the day.
Right. I was really into 신과 함께, along with the Gods, which is also a webtoon that was turned into a movie. So I have to agree with Walter on that. But Sung-jin, can you recommend some other pieces which are really in these days? Because you visited lots of places related to the webtoon industry, as we saw.
Right, so I'm a little bit on the similar lines with Walter. To be honest, I'm not a great Webtoon fan, so I don't read them as often. So I had to do some research and ask my friends to actually get the recommendations. But this time I would like to share a bit more about Kangpul's pieces. So other than The Light Shop, which I've already mentioned, another well-known Webtoon is Moving, as well as Pure Love Comics or Apartment. I did watch the recent drama adaptation, as Walter just mentioned, of The Light Shop, though this is exactly about those who are in between life and the afterlife. And for a lot of those in their 30s and 40s, he seems to be really popular. And when I talk to industry experts, it seems like some of the major features that guided the success of Webtoons are vertical scrolling and background music, as well as 3D backgrounds.
Now, you actually mentioned that it's a growing industry, and Soa and I did look at her report 10 years ago, and it was interesting to see that it was growing from when she reported it, and it was very much on the uprise, and it coincided with your chart as well. Surely the government must be providing some sort of support to further develop this industry.
Right, so the government invests in this industry every year. That includes games, animations, webtoons, and others. This year it will invest around 3% or a little bit more than 3% compared to last year in the sector. Looking just at the webtoon sector, the government will be investing an additional 8.4 billion won, or 5.85 million US dollars this year.
But Songjin, we hear despite the continuous growth, a recurring problem is still there here in the webtoon industry.
Right, exactly. As I mentioned during my report briefly, webtoons are a part of the intellectual property realm, which is why this very inherent problem comes to the surface, the fact that it can be easily stolen. And what I mean by this is regardless of the copyright that each of these webtoons hold, they have been distributed illegally to different countries, which obviously harms the original creator. Another issue similar to this is the fact that despite the growing industry itself, individual creators still have their own difficulties.
Because most webtoons are released once a week, there is so much to work on. Though finding ways to improve artists' pay would be best, with a limited amount of time. These webtoon artists have been seeking other ways to make their working environment sustainable, like simplifying background details.
Ultimately, to make this webtoon sector more sustainable, there needs to be more policies to help these individual artists.
It's great to know that all aspects of the webtoon industry, and it's very helpful for us to know for the future as well.
And also knowing about the hidden, aspect of the webtoon industry that you introduced to us today, Songjin. So thank you very much for your coverage today.
It was a pleasure sharing it with you guys.